You wouldn't normally expect a Supreme Court session to have a moment that feels like it came straight out of a courtroom drama, but every now and then, even the most formal settings can get a little unexpected. So there they were. 9 justices, robes, seriousness, everything you'd picture. And then, in the middle of a particularly tense discussion, Chief Justice John Roberts made a remark. Not a harsh one, not even rude on the surface, but it had a tone, a little smirk, a raised brow, the kind of comment that sounds polite but carries a subtle jab underneath. And it was aimed squarely at Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Now, in any room, when someone tries to be clever at someone else's expense, there's that little pause. Everyone feels it. The courtroom didn't break into chaos, of course. It's still the Supreme Court. But the silence that followed said a lot. It was one of those moments where people glance around without moving their heads, wondering how the other person is going to react. And Barrett, sitting there with her usual calm, didn't flinch. She didn't bristle or look flustered. Instead, she leaned into it. Her response wasn't loud or defensive. It wasn't even sarcastic. It was something more effective than that, measured, confident, and just sharp enough to shift the energy in the room. She took the point Roberts was making, picked it apart piece by piece, and without ever raising her voice, turned it into an opportunity to reinforce her argument. It was almost surgical, the way she did it. No dramatics, just clarity. And maybe that's what made it land so strongly. The courtroom wasn't expecting a comeback that sounded less like a rebuttal and more like someone walking calmly through a burning building without blinking. Now, to understand why that moment felt so charged, it helps to know how these justices interact. There's a balance, tradition, hierarchy, experience, and while every justice brings their own style, there's usually an invisible line people don't cross, even when they disagree. Roberts, as Chief Justice, is known for trying to keep the court looking united. He often positions himself as the centrist, the moderator. So when he nudges someone with a comment like that, it carries a little more weight. It's like the teacher in the room questioning your answer, not just any student. But Barrett didn't defer, and that mattered. What also made her response stand out was how grounded it was. She didn't sidestep the point or try to reframe it with vague words. She tackled the content directly, made a clear case for why her perspective held up, and did it without dismissing his entirely. It was a kind of intellectual judo. You use the momentum of the other person's argument to flip things around, but you don't have to throw them across the room to do it. And maybe that's why people are still talking about it. Not because it was loud or dramatic, but because it showed something deeper about how Barrett handles pressure. She's been scrutinized, debated, picked apart in the media. But in that room, in that moment, she showed that presence can be quiet and still carry weight. She didn't try to match Roberts in tone or try to one-up him in wit. She just stayed right in the middle of her argument and let it stand on its own. And when that happens, when someone holds their ground without showing off, it kind of disarms the room. No one yelled. No one clapped. But you could almost feel the shift, like the air recalibrated. The Chief Justice, to his credit, nodded slightly, didn't push the point further, and the conversation moved on, but not quite the same way it started. Something had shifted, and in a place built on words and interpretation, those moments matter more than they seem.